Okay, take 2 on our live session of learning how to do turns. And I am out on the water this time. And so I want to show you today all levels of turns. I'm going to start with the most basic turns and how we progress from there in how you turn your board. And so if you're like, well, I'm beyond the most basic turn, that's totally fine, because maybe you have friends that are getting into paddling and you need to teach them how to do the most basic turn. So that's why I'm going to start there. It's really great to have these things mastered, to be able to help people with these things, and to also a lot of this, especially the beginning stages of learning to turn, it's a safety thing as well, knowing that you can get back to where you came from when you're paddling. So what I would encourage you to do is to save this video and to come back to it. You know, when you're learning, when you're practicing your turns, you can, you know, watch kind of the turn that I'm doing, the examples I give, pause the video, and then practice yourself, you know, if you have it on a dock or something like that, so that it's fresh in your mind, some of the tips and the pointers that I'm going to give you. This is by no means an exhaustive list of tips or pointers or ways that other paddlers might think about or describe how to turn your board, but it'll give you a pretty good idea of what I'm thinking about and what I use to describe these maneuvers in paddling. So the first turn that every paddler needs to learn is a backstroke turn, and that's the easiest way to turn your board. It doesn't require you to move your feet. It's just you're paddling forwards in one direction and you want to turn and go the other direction, and so you reach behind you. Instead of doing a forward stroke, which is a pull from front to back, you're going to do a backstroke, which is a pull from back to front. And you always want to do 1 or 2 backstrokes, and then the important thing is to follow your backstroke with a forward stroke on the other side. So if I have some forward momentum and then I want to turn, I'm going to paddle backwards on one side of the board and then forwards on the other side of the board to complete the turn. And so some tips for your backstroke turn are to make sure that you're digging your paddle in nice and deep. One thing that I see people doing is they kind of do these like heading strokes, right? Backstroke, if you're trying to turn your board, if you're trying to maneuver your board, dig that paddle in deep and pull hard from back to front. Another tip I have is only do 1 or 2 backstrokes, change hands to the other side, and finish with a forward stroke. The reason is that if I do a backstroke, and another backstroke, and another backstroke, eventually my board has momentum going backwards, and I'm no longer going to be able to turn and maneuver. The fin underneath our board is designed to help us track in a forward direction. Once we start getting momentum backwards, your board will actually start doing the opposite of what you're trying to get it to do. So nice and deep, 1 or 2 strokes backwards, forward stroke on the other side. Another tip for that is to combine this back to front and front to back with a little bit of direction with your stroke. So if I, instead of paddling a straight stroke where my paddle is straight up and down along the side of my board, I can do a steering stroke where I paddle nice and wide, like an arc. So for my backstroke, I'm going to paddle from the tip of from close to my board, away from my board. And when I'm finishing that forward stroke, I'm going to go from right next to my board, and like a big arc, I'm going to push away. And that'll help you turn a little bit more sharply as well. Am I too close? No. Okay, cool. So, moving right along, since most of you do already know that stroke, we're going to practice a crossbow turn. So the next step up from a backstroke turn is a crossbow turn. And a crossbow turn helps you make a turn a little bit more efficiently, because rather than having to change hands, paddle backwards, change hands again, paddle forwards, what I do is I don't change my hands. My paddle stays in my hands and my paddle goes across the bow of my board. And I still do that backstroke, but I didn't change hands. I go back across the bow of my board and I finish that with a forward stroke. So the difference between a crossbow turn and just a regular backstroke turn is with a crossbow turn, I'm paddling forwards, and then I want to turn, I don't change my hands. I reach across the nose of my board, I pull, and I use those techniques of digging in deep, nice and hard, and also reaching away, pulling back towards, and starting close, and then reaching away. So I'm basically making a big semicircle around the nose of my board to direct the nose of my board. So a crossbow turn, I'm just doing a bunch of them here in succession, you can use to make, it's really effective for making up to like a 90-degree turn. If you're actually doing a 180-degree turn, it's not going to be super effective for you. Your backstroke turn, you'll have to do, you can do a couple of your backstroke turns in succession and that'll give you a 180-degree turn, or 2 or 3 or even 4 of those crossbow turns as you saw to get yourself to turn 180 degrees. So, but what it is really efficient at, using this crossbow maneuver, it's really efficient at doing larger steering corrections. So if I need the nose of my board to move to say between 10 and 30 or 40 degrees in one direction, I can use this technique of using these steering and turning strokes where I'm either from bringing the paddle close to the edge of the board and I'm turning the blade away from the paddle and I'm paddling away from my board, right? So I can move the nose of my board away. You probably do that one. That one's pretty common sense, right? But I can do the same thing where I can pull the nose of my board one direction. I can pull it back, right? So without having to change hands, I can steer my board with my paddle out in front of me by using different variations of a crossbow maneuver. So, not super efficient for making turns, although it does work, but it is super efficient for just doing quick steering corrections, larger steering corrections than you would do with just your paddle or your feet, which is another topic we'll talk about a different time. So that was a backstroke turn and a crossbow turn. Practice those two. And then the fastest, the quickest way to get your board, I'm going to just maneuver myself here a little bit away from the dock. So, apologize for the neighbors mowing their lawn. Hopefully that's not too loud in the background. The fastest way to get your board to turn 180 degrees or even 90 degrees is to get it to pivot on the fin, doing a pivot turn or a buoy turn, as you might have heard it called. And so the first step in order to be able to do a pivot or a buoy turn is that you actually need to be able to move your feet on your board. So if you are not yet comfortable moving your feet, practice your crossbow turning to get efficient at that. And practice moving your feet on your board. I did a whole talk a couple weeks ago on the SIC Maui Facebook page, same place, where I talked about moving your feet on your board. So go to that one and get a lot of great tips about moving your feet. Practice moving your feet. Just to recap that for you this morning, feet To do a pivot turn, you need to be able to move your feet on your board. And the first thing I would say is if you're scared of falling in, it's going to be a lot harder when you're scared to fall in. So the thing that I would say is practice it on a day where it's warm, where it's beautiful, where you don't mind falling in, and just go ahead and get it over with and just jump in and just get wet, because it's going to make that experience that much easier for you. Oscar, not you. My dog heard me say jump in and he's like, oh, okay. So get yourself wet, jump in, it'll make it a lot easier for you. In order to do a pivot turn, you want to practice moving your feet on your board. And so the first thing that I do is I actually turn my front foot sideways, because you want your feet to move on the center line of your board. I'm going to slide this foot back. I'm bracing, I'm low. My front foot slides back. Both my feet are sideways. They're moving up and down the center line of the board. And I get my weight into my back foot. So the way that you get your board to turn the quickest is basically the higher the nose of the board is up out of the water, the faster the board is going to pivot on that fin. You didn't see how now the board is not turning. So the further back you get, even if you're taking baby steps, the further back you get, the faster your board's going to turn. So, some tips to help you are practice moving your feet up and down your board, center line of your board, sideways, practice bracing. Right? And then get your weight into your back foot. Right? You don't actually have to get all the way on the tail of the board. That will make the board turn the fastest, but it is also the least stable position to be all the way on the back of the board. Hello, Reggie. You're only 2/3 or 3/4 of the way back. One of the biggest tips for a pivot turn is get your weight into that back foot. I have almost no weight on my front foot right now. All my weight is in my back foot. So here's the difference. Watch the nose. Watch the nose of my board. If I have equal weight in my feet, my nose of my board is here. If I put my weight in my back foot, my nose of the board lifts up a little bit more, and the board's going to pivot a little more easily. You can't be on here right now. No, you have to go that way. Oh my gosh, okay. Okay guys, this is gonna be really funny.
Doggy pivot turn.
So the first tip was practice moving your feet. The second tip was weight in your back leg. A third tip is keep your feet wide apart. So again, the further back you get on your board, the less stable. But if my front foot is quite a bit further forward, I can always put weight in my front foot to feel a little bit more stable, right? So, weight in my back leg, feet are wide apart, I'm center line of the board, feet are turned sideways, and hold on, let me turn and come back to you. Okay. you, right here, in front of you, and your hips are square to your paddle, it's more stable. So you can do a couple of shorter strokes where the paddle stays in front of you to make your turn. When your paddle goes behind you here, now my paddle's behind my back, right? It's less stable in this position. But it is a different variation. To make a sharper turn is to go all the way around the back of your board. So a little more stable and a little more, keeping a little more momentum to your turn is to just do a couple of shorter strokes, keeping the paddle in front of you. Still arcing, still semicircle strokes. A quicker turn, less strokes, but also less forward momentum. You slow your forward momentum is to paddle all the way around the back of your board. So you can play with those two and see how they affect your, how quickly you turn. And you can play with seeing where you're standing on your board, how far back you're getting is affecting how quickly you can turn, right? So then you say, okay, I have to be able to do left turns and right turns. So most people, I can actually step back with both of my feet and I can always have a front side turn. Front side turn means your paddle is in front of you. So if you're a goofy footer, your left foot's back, and a front side turn is going to be a right shoulder turn. If you're a regular footer, your right foot is back, and a front side turn is a left shoulder turn. But say you're a regular footer and you need to make a right shoulder turn. Well, now it's called a backside turn because you're actually, and I don't know if this is actually correct, but this is how I think about it. Now my paddle is on my backside. So this is my backside turn, right? So, how do I make a backside turn? Front side turns are easier. Your paddle is in front of you, and you're stroking. Let me not run into the dock here. Front side turns are easier because your paddle's in front of you. It's more stable. A backside turn is a little bit more difficult. That would be if I am a regular footer, my right foot back, but I need to make a turn to the right side. So you can simply do this opposite behind you, but this is less stable. When you're in this twisted position, it's less stable. So how do I make that easier? I combine a crossbow turn with a backside turn. I'm going across the bow, I'm pulling back to front, and front to back. So, that's a fun one to practice. Same rules apply for your pivot turn. Again, where you have to first be good at moving your feet up and down your board, turning your feet sideways, getting to the back of your board, waving your back leg, and now front side would be a left turn, back side would be a right turn, combining a cross bow to the maneuver. Yeah? So, I'm going to show you front side and back side. If you're a goofy footer, you're going to step back with your left leg. A front side turn will be keeping your paddle in front of you on your left side. Left leg is back, paddle's on the left side. And I'm making these semicircle turns to the left. Oscar is making this way more difficult for me. But say I need to turn, I'm a goofy footer, but I need to do a pivot turn to the left. I'm going to cross bow, turn. I just happen to have 40 pounds holding down the front of my board. So that is kind of an example of how many strokes it's going to take if you don't get all the way to the back of your board. So again, some tips I have are feet wide apart, stay low, right? So when you get low, your center of gravity is lower and it's easier to balance. Another tip I have is keep your paddle in the water and keep paddling. Even as you're moving, even as you're moving forwards and stepping back to the front of your board, and as you're moving to the back and stepping back on your board, your paddle is in the water, and you want to keep paddling and you want to keep momentum. Hold on, Oscar! Right? My paddle's in the water, I'm stepping back forward and I'm paddling each and every stroke. Your paddle in the water is your base, is your kickstand. Make this one is when they're trying to turn, they're still paddling in a straight line. When you're trying to turn, you need to make steering strokes. You need to make these arching, wide strokes. A front side turn is easier than a backside turn. So practice that one first. Or if you don't know if you're a goofy footer or a regular footer, I kind of feel like that's a blessing because I didn't know what that was when I started paddling. And so I just thought I had to learn how to step back with both feet. And so if you're just beginning, moving up and down on your board, practice with both feet. Get good at both feet because you will have an advantage. You'll be able to do a front side turn, whether it's a left turn or a right turn. Because front side turns are faster and easier, more stable position, more stable turn to make. Just practice, have fun. I mean, the biggest thing is, in order to get better, you want to practice these things. And another thing I see people do a lot is like, especially in a race, you get to the buoy and you get to the buoy to make the turn and you just like kind of stop, right? And then there's like this like thing that happens. Right? And meanwhile, a minute later, there's 4 people going around you making their turn, right? Or you fall in, right? So practice this before you get to a race. And if you're not good at moving your feet up and down your board, sorry, Oscar. If you're not good at moving your feet up and down your board, don't put your dog on your board. Practice that first. And when you get to a race, instead of spending a minute just shuffling up and down your board, or worse, spending a minute swimming off of your board, do instead a crossbow turn. Do the safe turn in the race situation. Because the fastest turn is going to be the turn where you stay on your board and you keep paddling. You don't stop paddling and try and shuffle up and down your board, right? And then spend the time when you're not at a race to practice those skills and the falling off your board and getting back on. All of those things are things to practice in your training. If you live in an area or marker buoys or docks. You can use those things to practice your turns. And because I know a lot of people have anxiety about that at events, or especially they don't want to be the one whose board gets hit by someone else's board, right? You want to be able to feel that you're in control and you know how to maneuver your board. And so this crossbow can help you with that. Moving your feet up and down your board will be instrumental with that. And knowing how to use your paddle to make steering strokes, pulling towards, pushing away. The more easily you can maneuver your board, the safer and more effective you're going to paddle as well. And again, for more tips on moving your feet, go back and check my last live video. And yeah, send me any questions that you have in the comments. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Seychelles SUP. I love your questions. Reach out anytime. Let me know what you want to hear about, whether it's turning, footwork related, or it's a totally different question or topic that you have. We will be doing more of these discussions or live sessions, and so I want to hear what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about, and we'll put it on the list. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and thanks so much for joining. Happy paddling!